And that's a big part of it, right? Like
Hmm.
there's this idea that entrepreneurship is lonely, and I have just never really bought into that. I think that's a story that's been created for us and passed through every single person you talk to in entrepreneurship will tell you that. Or even people who don't have their own business will tell you like, oh, entrepreneurship is lonely. And I just refuse to buy into that. Like I have purposely put people in my life that run a business and understand that I can vent to, that I can support, that can support me. Can we co-work together? Can we have
Hmm.
coffee together? Can we share ideas together? Can we dream big together? Like,
Hello, and welcome to the Chaos to Clarity podcast. My name is Maggie, aka your business bestie. I teach female coaches, speakers, and course creators to release procrastination and perfection so that they can get more done, book more clients, and have the time freedom that all entrepreneurs crave. This is not your typical business coaching podcast. We're talking about business, life, probably some wooey magic, and probably some singing or referencing song lyrics along the way. So if you're into business building, making more money, and getting a little bit of a mindset shift along with having a good laugh, you're definitely in the right place. I've grown 3 businesses from $0 to consistent 4 and 5 figure months over the last 15 plus years. And now I'm helping you do the same thing. It didn't happen overnight, and it certainly didn't happen without the help of others. They say it takes a village to raise children, and I believe it takes a village to grow a business as well. So, in this podcast, you'll find people who help you grow your village, cheer you on, as well as holding you accountable. I'm so excited you're here, and I can't wait for you to listen to each episode. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Chaos to Clarity podcast. Today I have Sarah Gemmell with me, and she is a networking queen. I'm so excited to have her on. We are going to talk about so many awesome things. Sarah, why don't you go ahead and tell everyone who you are, who you serve, and how long you've been in business?
yeah. So I am Sarah Gemmell, and I've been in business for this will be my 7th year since I transitioned from being an addictions counselor into being an entrepreneur. And I ended up here in this networking space because when I left addictions counseling, I went into fitness, and I was running like a very traditional personal training business where you exchange, time for money and all the things, right? But I knew that that's not really what I wanted. And when I broke my back in 2017, I needed a fusion in 18. I kind of had this like wake up call of like, oh, okay, like I really need to have an online component to this business, right? Because I was looking at 6 to 12 months of being out of work. And that kind of started the online stuff. And I did hybrid for a while, but then the pandemic happened. And when the pandemic happened, it was kind of a blessing in disguise in a lot of ways, but in the way of business, where it was like, okay, it really forced me into like online business. And when that happened, I grew from just like personal training to a global fitness company serving women all over the world. I had a team of 12 people who worked for me. Like it was just this amazing platform that we were able to build. And the main lead generator for that was networking, right? Like that was the one lead generation that I had down pat. And when I started networking, I really relied on my personality because I'm just really good at making friends and building rapport, right? I have a psychology degree. I was a counselor. Like it's really easy for me to build rapport with people quickly. But I realized very quickly in networking that the personality just wasn't enough, right? Like there has to actually be strategy behind the messaging in your introduction and how you do your one-to-ones and how you ask for things and how you show support. So when I shut the fitness business down, it was kind of just a natural progression. I was hosting networking events virtually. I started doing them in person. And I really just thought it was going to be that. I was like, oh, this is cute. Like, I'll just host events and like call it a day. But it turned into consulting with
Mhm.
sales teams and business owners. So I do a lot in the corporate space now, which is interesting. But working with sales teams and business owners and small business owners, entrepreneurs, how to actually leverage that networking, how to be better and more strategic at networking. So you see a more consistent flow of referrals, right? Like the people I'm working with are already networking.
Mhm.
They just either aren't seeing consistent referrals or they're not quality leads, right? Or maybe they're not seeing leads at all. Maybe they're thinking that that group that they're in is a dud but really it's not the group, it's just the messaging of their introduction, or maybe they're, missing the follow-up opportunity. So coming in and really looking at the strategy behind it is where I'm at now. So I travel the country speaking at different summits, different corporate offices, things like that, working with teams on their networking strategy.
That is so awesome. And I mean, just for me, from like personal experience being in your groups, it's been so amazing how much my networking has shifted. And I didn't really realize that it needed to shift until I realized that my other networking opportunities were not producing what I wanted because my messaging was off, right? So learning that stuff has been so huge for me and my business, and just even the way that I approach networking, right? Like now being able to like look at other networking groups around my area and say, okay, here's an opportunity for me to also help them grow and grow that. So I think that's been really, it's just been really amazing just to watch my own progression, but also yours, right? As I've been on this journey with you, just to see like how things have grown and what they've grown into. It's been really amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been fun, and it's like it's so easy. You know what I mean? Like they talk about business being easy, and like it's still a lot of work, but it's so easy to quote unquote sell something like our group because they come in and they see it and they're like, wait a minute, like these women really are collaborating all the time. And like, it's not just one pitch after the other. Like, I don't feel like this is a meat market of people just trying to sell me things.
Right.
And when they feel that vibe and that energy, they just want to be a part of it. You know what I mean? Like, then it's just logistics. Can you be there every week?
Right.
And if you can, cool, let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, for me, the collaborations have been huge, just to like grow essentially my like Rolodex of people that I know, right? When I'm out and about to say, when I'm listening to other people talk, to hear them say, oh, I'm having trouble with XYZ. I'm almost always like, oh, I have someone, let me point you to someone else, right? Or let me invite you to this networking group, or, things like that. So that has been just so amazing for those opportunities, and also leaves me not like desperately searching for like, oh my gosh, who can I refer this week? Who can I, right? Because that was what turned me off of other networking groups, was like, you had to show up and you had to have, I don't know, 3 to 5 quality leads or whatever. And I'm like, that's not how I network. That's not me. So,
and you can't force organic. You know what I mean? Like if you are truly interested in organic relationships, organic referrals, like organically supporting people, there's not really a quota. It really will just happen naturally and consistently. Now you actually have to show up and do it. There has to be the effort behind it, right? Because if you just wait for it to happen organically, it won't happen at all.
Right.
But like if you really pay attention, people every single day are looking for some type of suggestion, some type of referral, like, and you build a brand for yourself when you're able to say to them, oh, I know someone who does that. And then you refer them to someone, they have a good experience. Or even if they don't ever work with that person, you can just give them names that they can go and they can look through, or make introductions for them or whatever. And you're now building your own brand as a well-connected person.
Right.
I had a personal training client one time come to me for a plumber just because she knew I knew, you had nothing to do with fitness, right? But she just knew that I knew everyone, and I knew someone that did everything. You know what I mean? And she's like, Sarah, my damn toilet pipe broke. Do you know a plumber? I'm like, I sure do. Got your back.
Right. Yeah. And, being able to be that kind of central hub, right? For people to be like, hey, I know Sarah will know. I know Maggie will know, that becomes very valuable from a business standpoint, right? Because now they're coming to you for that, but then they're also going to remember like, oh yeah, she does coaching, she does consulting, right? And start to grow that way. So yeah, it has been so cool just to watch the growth of that, and really like watch other people come out of their shell, and also for them to have that light bulb moment of like, oh, wow. Yeah, this is really easy. Once I like get into that rhythm and get that like, just like find those things that, people can like refer out, or even just like remember you by.
Yeah, I love it. It's just so special when you really can connect with those business owners and those even like friends, right? Like the hidden benefit to being in a networking group is you have friends who understand what it is to be an entrepreneur, right? Like you
Yes.
can bounce ideas back and forth, you can co-work, you can vent, you can do all these things that kind of like friends do. But you realize the power of that in growing your business. Like it just becomes like second nature to collaborate with one another, to share each other's stuff, to, show support in that way. And you're like, wow, this is so much easier than trying to sit in my at home office trying to figure this ish out on my own. Like,
Right.
hard. You can grow organically on social media, but it just takes longer for people to buy into a relationship with you when you're a complete stranger and you meet on social media. It might take years for them to consider you a friend, but you meet them one time in person or on a Zoom call, face to face, face to screen.
Right. Yeah.
They're gonna either like you or not like you a lot quicker. They're going to make their mind up about you a lot quicker than just, hiding behind your computer, your phone, whatever, which is what's comfortable.
Right.
Like,
yes.
It is much more comfortable to just stay at home, right? And not be seen and not have to talk to people, not have to put yourself out there. Even for those of us who are extroverted, it's just easier. But you realize how much easier business gets when you have all these referral partners in your pocket.
Right. Yeah. Well, and even thinking from a corporate standpoint of, like there is somebody that does everything at corporate, right? When you need something in a corporate standpoint, you're going to go to that person's desk and say, hey, can you help me with this project? Right. So that's what networking essentially turns into, is that collaborative environment from, like corporate, but bringing it to the entrepreneur, the small business. And I think a lot of times, and I see it with my husband as well. He's a project manager and he's like, how do I bring my team together? And I was like, have you done team building exercises? Have you asked them, like even some of the things we've done on our mastermind days where it's been like those fun kind of get to know you type thing. Like, have you tried doing some of that stuff? And he's like, where do you learn this stuff? And I'm like, in the networking meetings that I go to, because how else am I going to get to know someone else?
Absolutely.
How else am I going to make those quick introductions and understand what someone else does very quickly, right? Within that like 45 to 60-second range, because I don't want to listen to somebody drone on and on.
Right. No one does.
No one
Anything
does.
Right? Like we're not interested. Sometimes like, you might give a longer introduction in a different setting, right? Like my introduction today was probably longer than a minute. But in that setting, when it's a bunch of introductions in a row, you have to be concise. And I think that a really interesting way for me to get to know people when you don't have a lot of time is I do care about your words. I won't say I don't care, but I'm not necessarily listening to your words because you can't really tell me that much about yourself in 60 seconds, right? You're going to get out the really basic, important stuff. But like, how do you show up? How's your energy? How's your confidence? How excited are you to be here? Are you confident in what you're saying? Are you playing with your hair? Are you stumbling over your words? Did you, start off with like, good morning? Or did you start off with, oh, don't mind me, I look like a mess?
Right.
And there's a lot of ways that you can tell stuff about a person where like, where's their confidence? Where's their energy? Even if you don't show up with good energy or a lot of confidence, I don't necessarily dislike you. It just tells me that maybe you haven't done this before. Maybe you're new to the space. Maybe you're new to business, right? So like, I'm kind of making up my mind about you from your energy and how you show up. Your words are secondary.
Right. Yeah,
you
absolutely.
can get a lot across in 60 seconds.
Yeah. And I think people don't always take the energy into consideration, right? And I've noticed, and it drives me nuts when, people, when I watch stories on Instagram or Facebook and people are like, oh my gosh, my hair, but good morning. And I'm like, I don't care about your hair or what is behind you or this, that, and the other thing. I don't care. I want to know what you have to say and I want to hear your energy. If you're not excited about what you're talking about, no, then I'm on to the next because, like I want that energy of like, oh, this person is excited, like makes me lean in a little bit and go, oh, wow. Oh yeah. I want to hear more about this.
And you really You only have 3 or 4 seconds to get someone to do that. You only have 3 to 4 seconds to have someone decide if they want to lean in or not. And if you start off with your background, your hair, your voice is hoarse because you don't feel good, your kids are whatever disclaimer you put on yourself, you just lost a majority of the people listening. And even if you have the best introduction, it's ruined by how you start, like how you start and how you show up. And then also, before you even start talking, how did you show up to the meeting? Did you show up on time? Whether it's virtual or in person, were you there on time? How do you look? Are you paying attention when other people speak? You're setting the tone for yourself before you even open your mouth.
Right.
You know, if you come into an in-person meeting and you just sit down and don't talk to anyone, people notice. If you come into a Zoom room 15 minutes late and your camera's off the whole meeting, people notice, right? If you, one time I had a lady, I swear to you, I think I might have told you this story. She's wearing glasses, right? So this is how I knew that this is what she was doing, because I could see the reflection in her glasses. She has a cup of wine, a glass of wine. She's looking over here while everyone's doing their introductions. I can see her watching a game show.
Oh,
over here like this.
Oh my God.
And I remember like the shock factor, but like laughing because I'm like, is she for real? Like, is this really happening right now? And it's like she was drinking her wine and watching her game show and didn't show any interest in the meeting at all until it was her time to share, until it was her time to pitch the group on whatever thing she was trying to sell to the group.
Right. Right.
So it's like, as much as I like her as a person, and I thought that was funny, and it's like, you know what? Good for you. But also, I'm not excited to pass your referrals because that tells me a lot.
Right.
That tells me a lot. And I'm losing trust in your brand when you show up that way to a meeting, because that tells me you're not really that interested.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because my 5-year-old, she definitely has a very short, right, attention span. So, you know, it is one of those things where it's like, I have, in the first 3 seconds of talking to her, I have to like captivate and capture her attention, or she is like literally off, right? Like similar to that person where, you know, I'm talking to her and she'll be like, yeah, mommy, I'm listening. Right. And she's clearly not. Right. So, you know, so we've gotten into the habit of saying, okay, what did I say to you? You know, and have her like repeat back, like, oh, you told me to do this. Right. Especially when it comes to like picking up toys. Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, Maida, can you pick up 5 toys in the living room? Yeah, mommy, you know, and 5 seconds later, did you hear what I said? No, right? So, you know, even from a young age, just helping her like tap into like, okay, this is what I asked, and then we can go play, right? Or we can move on to the next thing. You know, like my hope is that it will prepare her someday for something like a networking meeting where she is actively paying attention and can, you know, make some of those decisions of like, yes, I see that person, they're paying attention, you know, I want to connect with that person, or I want to send that person referrals. And I think, you know, as you're going through business, it's important to start understanding how people are paying attention, right? That energy exchange is very important. And, you know, in a larger networking meeting, it can be overwhelming, but also like you can still notice like who is paying attention, who is not, right? So then it becomes like, okay, I've got these 3 or 4 people that I, you know, from this meeting that I know, like if I can pass them a referral, that'd be great this week. Or, you know, so I think that has really helped me in my networking journey as I've grown my own business, right?
Yeah.
And just to know that like I have someone to lean on, right? Like to not feel so alone in a small business.
And that's a big part of it, right? Like there's this idea that entrepreneurship is lonely, and I have just never really bought into that. I think that's a story that's been created for us and passed through. Every single person you talk to in entrepreneurship will tell you that. Or even people who don't have their own business will tell you like, oh, entrepreneurship is lonely. And I just refuse to buy into that. Like I have purposely put people in my life that run a business and understand that I can vent to, that I can support, that can support me. Can we co-work together? Can we have coffee together? Can we share ideas together? Can we dream big together? Like, I have different friends in different areas of business, different phases of business, whatever, different levels of friendship. But like, I just refuse to believe this whole idea of entrepreneurship is lonely. Like, when I feel lonely, I will just go find a meeting to be a part of. I will go schedule the coffee date. I'll go get on Zoom with someone. I'll text someone. Like, I kind of refuse to buy into that. And I think that's just an added bonus to networking. I network to grow my business. And I'm okay with saying that. I think not enough people are okay with saying that because they think it is spammy or icky, and it's not. I'm here to grow a business. If my business doesn't grow from the hours that I spend in this space, then I'm probably not going to keep coming back. But the added bonus, right? The added ROI, the intangible ROI is I just made a couple more friends, people that I could hang out with, have coffee with, work with, that kind of thing. Right. And I love that aspect of it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely have different times thought like, man, this is kind of lonely and I feel alone. But then you're right. If I'm choosing to let it be like that, I have the power to go out and jump into a networking meeting. I have the power to connect with friends and say, hey, do you want to meet for coffee? I have some ideas that I need someone to talk to. Like, I just want your feedback on this, right? Like, so it's your choice to be lonely. It's also your choice to change that, right? To shift that energy to be like, oh, I haven't talked to people in a week. Like, I'm going to schedule some collaboration calls, or I'm going to schedule some coffee chats, right? Like, that is the power in being an entrepreneur. You get to decide that. In corporate, it's kind of decided for you, right? A lot of people, they have weekly meetings, blah, blah, blah. So, you get to see those people, but when you're an entrepreneur, it's very easy to, put the blinders on and get like deep into work. And all of a sudden you're like, oh man, it's been a while since I've talked to so-and-so.
To be honest with you though, I think people in corporate do it too. Like, I think people in corporate get comfortable. So they might not physically be alone, right? Because they have a team, they have an office, they have a whatever, but they get really comfortable with their people. So they're going to talk to the same people every day in the same department, the same whatever. They're going to do their little team building. But are you networking with the other teams within your company? Are you networking with other people in other companies that can either you guys share audiences, or maybe you're just looking to hire? Like, when it comes time to hiring people, having a network that you can reach out to and say, hey, do you have someone that can fill this position? Right? Or, hey, we have a client that we did this project for, but now they need X, Y, and Z. Can you do it for them? Or we're having trouble with this billing, so we have to talk to the finance department. Like, in corporate, there's still that complacency of just talking to the same people, where I think in entrepreneurship, the complacency is like talking to yourself or your cat, right? Or your kid. There's still this level of complacency, or we talk to the people who are the easiest to talk to. When I was in personal training, I talked to other trainers and people in nutrition. Did I talk to the insurance agents, the real estate agents, the business coaches, the whatever? Like, reach outside of the easy referral partners and the easy whatever partners that you have. Expand your audience, diversify your audience. Whether you're in corporate or whether you're in entrepreneurship, you should have people at the ready that you're building those relationships with. What if in corporate you decide to leave your job and you're looking for a new position? Who are you networking with that can get you in with another company? Right? Or whatever the situation is. There's a bunch of different ways that we still need referral partners in corporate. And I think that it often falls flat where people just don't think about it until they need it. And we talk about this in entrepreneurship all the time, right? You should constantly be prospecting. For us, we're prospecting new clients, right? Because most of us work either just ourselves or a small team. In corporate, you should be constantly prospecting new hires, new referral partners, new clients, new whatever, right? And I think that we often forget that we're not prospecting on a constant basis. We fall into this problematic pattern of only prospecting when we need someone, like right there and then. That's when you show up with commission breath, because you're like, well, I have an open spot in my clientele book, that I need to fill today because I just had a client cancel yesterday.
Right.
But if you're constantly prospecting and planting those seeds, you might have a full book and not even have room for a new client right now, but you're planting that seed and letting the relationship build organically. And then in 3 months from now, when you have an opening, saying, hey, you and I have, we've been in the same networking group for like 6 months now. I have this opening for a client, for someone who is a personal trainer looking to bring their business online. Do you happen to know anyone that you could introduce me to? And now it's so organic.
Right.
And now it's gonna produce a lot more fruit, right? From the seed you just planted 6 months ago, versus this happens to me all the time in the nature of what I do. But I have people all the time, they'll send me a message. Hey, do you have someone that would be interested in buying this thing? I'm like, cool, I don't even know who you are. Right? Like I literally, you just followed me on Instagram, right? So I really don't know who you are. Or I only listened to your introduction once. Like that, I still don't know who you are. Like I still am not ready to just introduce you to a paying client.
Right.
Like let's start off with a coffee chat. Let's start off with, a market research interview, or there's a million different ways that you could do it. But the first time that you met me, or like you don't even follow me on Instagram, I just get this message from you of, hey, you're looking for this, like that may produce some referrals, some leads.
Right.
But it's probably going to scare more people off than it attracts them.
Right. Yeah.
People
and
don't
I think
breath.
Right. People don't understand that. And it's, it's a learning curve, definitely. Right. I know I was,
oh yes,
we've all done it, and we've all learned from
I've
it.
done
right.
it.
And I think that's the important part, is like, as you're learning and growing, to be like, oh yeah, that feels really scammy. But like, like you're talking about, when you plant those seeds and start to nourish and grow and just allow things to happen, the collaboration calls, the coffee chats, it starts to become like, oh wow, I can really start to see like what this person is about. And then people start to realize like, oh, okay, I do know someone who could use those services. And I think people they don't like having to wait, right? They don't want to have to wait and like nourish the small stuff so that it turns into that bigger stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think too, we look past the initial wins of like, even if not just like, oh, follow me on Instagram, join my email list, right? Because that's just like one thing that whatever. But if you get one person to follow you on Instagram and they just start engaging, you just start getting a few more comments here and there. You have a few more people sharing to their Instagram stories or tagging a friend. That's going to grow your audience. If you do like a free consult with someone and then you get a video testimonial because you guys are referral partners in the same networking group, that's a win. You can take that video testimonial, use it to attract paying clients outside of that, right? Or, if you get invaluable market research, or, don't bypass those small wins, because those can happen pretty quickly, right? You ask for a recommendation on LinkedIn, or you have one coffee chat with someone. Like these are things that give you that immediate gratification. Does it lead to immediate money? No. And that's where I think people bypass it. But if you think about the indirect ways that helps you grow your business, if you have one more recommendation on LinkedIn, that's going to build your expert positioning, right? If you have one more person engaging with you on Instagram, it's going to boost you in the algorithm for your organic growth. And then it's going to start reaching the ideal people that you want to reach. And then it's bringing you money.
Right.
And I think a lot of times when we think about networking, it's like, well, we just want the lead. We want the sale. We want the lead. We want the sale. And that's a huge mistake I used to make. You go into a group and you're like, who can I sell this to?
Right.
The number one mistake I ever made in networking, I will tell you, is the idea that I would only network with my ideal client.
Yeah.
Biggest mistake I ever made, because I automatically went into those groups with the mindset of like, I'm going to sell them something because they're my ideal client and I can help them. Right now, I just showed up with commission breath, and the whole idea of like, well, I need clients today. I used to do that too. Like all these things that I talk about of like, don't do this in networking, I learned through experience.
Right.
Either I I did it, right? And I was like, thinking back, I'm like, oh, that was cringy. Or and that's okay, whatever. We live and learn. But like, you have your own cringy moments, or when you are interacting with someone else, if you get that cringy feeling, don't just like talk shit on them, because a lot of people will do that. Oh, don't send me a cold message on Facebook.
Right.
I'm not going to talk shit on you, but I'm going to dissect. This is the psychology part of me. I'm going to dissect why I didn't like it. Right. Because I want to figure out, why did that make me feel so icky, and how am I going to make sure that I don't do that to someone else, right? Because I've sent cold messages, right? Maybe it's someone that I've met before, but I don't nurture that relationship at all, and then all of a sudden I'm like, hey, there's an event coming up if you want to come. It happens sometimes, right? But like, if you go into why it made you feel icky, you're like, okay, I'm going to make sure that I'm actually following up with them and showing them support before I send them the email or the message of like, hey, buy something, or sign up for this thing, or, do me this favor. Am I going to their Instagram and showing them love? Am I making introductions? Am I, how am I showing them support before I just go and send them a message asking for a favor?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what is something challenging that you have overcome in your business, right? It could be your entire career. It could be like where you've been like just really nurturing the networking stuff, like just anything that pops out.
All of it. Entrepreneurship is ghetto. Really. I have my quarterly meltdowns where I'm like, screw this, I'm getting a job.
Yeah. Relatable.
I think that the most challenging thing, this is just one of many, but the thing that stands out to me the most is, for me, being overstimulated. Because when I get overstimulated because either I broke my own boundaries, or I overworked myself, or I did something that wasn't really in alignment with me, something that, maybe I did out of desperation for money. That overstimulation is, one, not good for my mental health, but two, when I get overstimulated, girl, I can be a bitch. Like, I can be hard to deal with when I get overstimulated. And now I'm not having the best interactions with people, or maybe because I know I can be kind of bitchy, I'm just not talking to people at all because I don't want to be mean, right? Like, I'm not intentionally mean ever, but sometimes I can just get short with people. I can get snippy with people because I'm overstimulated. So then I just won't talk to people at all. And then like my follow-ups or my customer service, and this is not necessarily something I'm struggling with right now, but in the past, I've seen a pattern of this. So I've been trying really hard to, and it's not a perfect science, right? But really implementing like those boundaries. I'm the queen of boundaries when it comes to other people, but I struggle with my own boundaries, right? Like giving myself that time to meditate, or, giving myself a whole day off, or honestly, even when I say I'm going to sit down and work, I need to sit my ass down and work, because I'll fart around for like 2 hours and all my high energy time just got wasted, like cleaning the baseboards.
Right.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So being really, really self-aware is really, really freaking important in entrepreneurship. You have to be so incredibly self-aware of like what your patterns are, what your thought patterns are, what your behaviors are. Like, where do you start to stand in your own way? And for me, I'll just like push myself to the point of overstimulation. And then it's, you know what I mean? So that is by far one of the things. And that overstimulation can easily explain like why I have my quarterly meltdowns, why I'm like, screw the whole thing, I'm going to burn the whole business down, right? Or like, I haven't made a sale, and hypothetically, I haven't made a sale in 3 weeks. If I look at that 3 weeks of why I haven't made a sale, why I haven't brought in a new client, a new member, whatever, it can almost always be tied back to overstimulation. Because when I get overstimulated, I'm in the bedroom dissociating with Netflix. It's been 3 weeks that I haven't done my follow-ups. I haven't gotten through my to-do list because I'm overstimulated.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. The mindfulness around like self-awareness and mindfulness, it's been a huge lesson for me, right? Like, even just in the last well, in the last 10 years. So I quit corporate 10 years ago. And, thinking like, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Like I'd had a photo business for a long time at that point. I quit and I was like, yeah, I'm going to go all in. And then I did go all in. And then I bought a yoga studio. And then I was like, I am so burnt out. And then I didn't want to work at all. Right. And then I was like, no, I'm just going to lay and watch Netflix for 3 weeks. And I don't even care. Right. I don't even care.
Yes.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But as my yoga journey really helped me develop that mindfulness, that mindset of like, okay, yes, like take a day off or end work early. If you're not being productive right now, get up and move your body. Do something, reinvigorate your energy, and then come back to it and have like one thing you're going to do, right? Like that mindfulness of like, okay, I can't focus. My to-do list is a million miles long. I'm going to get up. I'm going to move my body, probably go outside. I'm going to come back and I'm going to choose one thing to do. And when I get that done, I'm going to celebrate the shit out of that because I did something today.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and then again, reapproach with that new light of like, yeah, I'm going to do one thing. And that really helped me with boundaries with myself. And I think that, right, the accountability, the boundaries for yourself is like, if you start there, that just grows exponentially in your business.
Well, I think in corporate, we kind of do those things without thinking about it, right? Because we clock in and we clock out. We're like, okay, we clock out at 5 o'clock. It's currently 3:30. I'm going to get up. I'm going to go get a snack. I'm going to come back here. I'm going to finish this thing because I clock out at 5.
Right.
And we have this idea, this sexy, beautiful image of entrepreneurship that we get to just work whatever hours we want. We get to do whatever we want. We get to be the boss. And we realize once we actually get into the depths of entrepreneurship that it's really not that sexy.
Right.
Like when you're in corporate, when you're someone else's employee, you get to just do what you do between these hours. If you're not there to do something, at the end of the day, even if you don't think there is someone who will pick up your job if you don't do it.
Yep.
Right. There's someone out there who's keeping the company running. And no offense, but you're not the end all be all of that company. But when it's your company, you are. And now you're being faced with every fear, every trauma response, every problematic behavior pattern and thought pattern, because at the end of the day, it's just not the same as corporate, right? The mindset's not the same. The structure's not the same. And now we're the ones that have to do it. So it's like in corporate, you just do it without thinking about why. In entrepreneurship, just like in romantic relationships, you are going to be faced with every single fear and trauma response that exists in your brain. And if you don't deal with them, you're going to have a really hard time. Same thing with romantic relationships. If you don't face your shit, your relationship is going to make you face it. Same thing with entrepreneurship. I never even talked about trauma responses until it came time to running a business. So it's like you have, like you said, this idea of being mindful about how you approach it, because you could easily sit here and work 24 hours a day, still feel like you're behind, still not get your shit done. So it's like giving yourself that time to clock out, like, okay, I'm going to do this one thing, and then I'm going to go watch TV, hang out with my kids, go to the gym, be done for the day, just like you would in corporate.
Yep.
But the idea of that one thing just needs to be a really important thing that's going to keep the company
right.
Running.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are definitely some, I wouldn't call them rules, but like definitely some guidelines to that one thing, but I will say that my whole business changed when I decided, like, you know what, I am not going to work past 3 p.m. And that's just what it is right now. That's the season of life that I'm in. And I don't work on Fridays. I don't, because I'm home with the kids all day. So drawing those two boundaries, like now I know that I have from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Thursday to get all my stuff done, whatever that stuff looks like. And that really helped a lot in my business.
It gives you that sense of urgency, right? Like, okay, I need to be done by 3 because the kids are coming home from school. And like, all of a sudden that 2 to 3 hour becomes the most productive hour because you're like, oh my God, I have to be done in an hour.
Right.
I think the most detrimental thing to me is if I have the whole day free. Like, I don't have kids.
Right.
right? I don't have like, my family doesn't even live here. So like, unless it's something optional that I'm doing with my friends, there's not a whole lot of things I have to do outside of running my business. So the most detrimental thing to me is having a whole day free.
Yeah.
Because I won't get shit done.
Uh-huh.
There's no urgency. It'll be 9 p.m. and I'm like, okay, I still have time. I still have time. But I know damn well after 4 p.m., I have no energy. I have
Right.
no desire to be creative, to start a project, to finish a project. Like you said, you know, for different reasons. When I hit that 3 o'clock, like I'm done. You know, like I'm going to do some stuff.
Right.
But the really important stuff that requires a lot of my brain energy or my creativity needs to happen first thing in the morning.
Yep.
Because otherwise it isn't getting done.
Yep.
And, you know, learning that stuff about yourself is important. But as soon as like, if I schedule like a networking meeting at 5 o'clock, now I have a deadline because I have to go be at that meeting by 5 o'clock. And when I come back at 7, I really ain't doing shit.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And
Yeah.
I think people forget about that. Like I've gotten into the habit of like blocking my schedule, and people have different views on time blocking, but it's never like the same. Like, you know, today I have 2 other time blocks for 2 different things that I'm working on because I've been procrastinating on it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm putting it in my calendar because now I'm going to do it. So I have an hour and a half for each of them after this to get it done. Right. So I've drawn that boundary, and I've changed the narrative on what that challenging thing is. And now I've given myself a way to complete it. And I think a lot of people, you know, as they step into entrepreneurship and they're like, oh, this is going to be amazing. And then they get into it and they're like, this sucks. I want to go back to corporate, right? Because it's easier, which, I mean, it could be easier, but also like the satisfaction of I mean, for me, it definitely wasn't. You know, somebody asked me recently, would you ever go back to your corporate job? And without even thinking, I was like, no, never. No, I don't want to work for someone else. I'm not chasing someone else's dream. Sorry.
I think that there has to be 2 types of people in the world. Like not everyone's meant to be an entrepreneur, and that's okay. I think a lot of people forget that sometimes, where like entrepreneurship is made to be so sexy and like this is the generation we're in. This is the trend. Just start your own business. Not everyone's meant to be the business owner. There are people who thrive as being the employee, and that's not to say that it's not to say that you can't grow. It's not to say that you haven't met your maximum, you know, self-actualization. It's not to say that you can't do these really awesome things. It's just that some people are better as an employee, right? And I think that it's not necessarily easier. It's easier in different ways. Like it depends on what you're looking for, right? To clock in and clock out, because you know, 1, you can help people, 2, you make some money. But at the end of the day, you don't need to worry about marketing and sales. You know, you can go home and be with your kids, be in your feminine energy outside of those 4 hours that you work every day. To some people, that sounds more appealing.
Right. Yeah.
To me, I think about in those 4 hours, I have to deal with someone's bullshit.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. I have enough of my own to deal with, enough of my own bullshit to deal with. I don't need to deal with, right? Like I don't need someone else's. So I'm just going to deal with my own.
Now, there are some days I'll be on Indeed. Like, listen, I totally learned how to put up with a boss. And I'm like, yeah, I'll totally. No, it never works out. I never actually do it. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah. Yes,
yeah,
for
I don't
sure.
actually do it.
So what is one piece of advice that you would tell your younger self?
My younger how much younger?
Oh, that's up to you. You know, I mean, some people went way back to like childhood. Some people were like, oh, my last year's self needed this kind of kick in the pants. And it doesn't even have to be like a kick in the pants, right? It's just more of like thinking back, like what would your younger self want to hear from your future self or you right now?
I feel like that's so loaded because the different phases of Sarah have needed very different things. I think like teenage me would have needed to hear like to give people a little bit more grace. Like teenage me, college me was very quick to pop off on people. Like I kind of had this like thing to prove that I was like a big bad bitch, you know? And I would just be really quick to pop off on people, which I actually found out was a lot of anxiety that I just didn't know how to manage. So it came out as like moodiness or irritability. So that's definitely something that I've worked really, really hard. Like, I like to consider myself pretty unfuckwithable at this point. Like, not that I'm chill or laid back by any sense of the word, not even a little bit. Those words are never used to describe me. But I've definitely learned to just give people more grace, and that growth in those interpersonal relationships, I think, are really important. Like, if you come at me sideways, I'm not just going to pop off on you. Like, I'm probably going to say, oh, I'm not taking that personally because I haven't even seen you all day. Like, you probably just had a bad day. Something else is pissing you off. You took it out on me. Is it okay that you took it out on me? No, but we can have a different kind of conversation where when you pop off on me and I just pop off on you back, now we're just arguing. We're not getting anywhere.
Right.
And like, I'm really not, I argue, don't get me wrong. I'm not like Jesus Christ, but like, I'm less likely to argue with someone because of how I approach giving people grace. And I wish that like high school me and college me could have caught on to that a little bit quicker. Whenever I like get in contact with someone now from like high school or college, I'll be like, don't hold that against me, please. I swear I'm not like that anymore. Like, yeah, just ready to pop off, you know? But yeah, that sounds like a good one. That's the first thing that comes to mind, I think. And that in business helps too, like just giving people more grace, like being more empathetic to what people go through.
Right.
If we really just took a step back and tried to understand what other people are going through and giving them more grace, that maybe they're just not communicating their feelings properly, they're going through something else, they're stressed out, they're anxious, right? If we just give people that grace of understanding, our interpersonal interactions become a lot easier and a lot more productive, right? It's not to say I become a doormat.
Right.
But I'm going to understand where you're coming from. I'm going to let you know that I'm not okay with you being disrespectful, but like, let's have a different kind of conversation instead of just yelling at each other back and forth or being passive aggressive back and forth. Like in business is the same thing. You know?
For sure. You know, and I think when you look at it from that way, that when people are coming at you, right, and in business, it's more so about them. It's not about you. Yeah. So, you know, like allowing that to kind of just roll off your shoulder and be like, okay, well, now that you got that out, can we have a conversation? Yeah. Can we talk? I'm sorry you're feeling upset. But how can we talk about this? Yeah.
Yeah. I think people take things like really personally when it's just like, no offense, but it's not about you. Right. I think it's almost an egotistical approach to take. To say that it's personal, right? Like if I say something disrespectful to you, right? But you and I have been friends for a while, you know that I'm not a disrespectful person. To take it personally, like, well, you disrespected me. Well, how if you took a different approach of like, okay, that's weird. Sarah's never disrespectful. Like, what's happening? Like, hey, I didn't like that you just said that. Like, are you okay?
Right.
Like, what's up? Like, what happened today that made you just act like that, right? And not to say that people deserve a pass, right? Like if I say something to you that you find disrespectful or passive aggressive, I 100% want to know so I can apologize for it and fix it. But for you to say, hey, listen, I've known Sarah for a while and she's not as a character disrespectful. So this is not about me. This is like, what happened? Like, right? Like what just happened to where that was your response? And I think when we give people that understanding, you know, and if you don't know someone different story, you can't really speak to their character. But when you can, saying like, hey, you're never snippy, you're never short with me, and you just got really short with me, right? Like, what's up?
Right. Yeah. I think that brings so much more like human like feelings to it, to be like, are you okay? You know, to ask someone that, I think, and as a woman, right? When you're having a bad day, if you pop off at someone and then someone's like, hey, are you okay? You know, to be like, it almost gives you that like ability to like sigh and be like, oh, okay, no, I'm not okay. I'm really sorry. And this is what's happening, right? It gives you that chance to be like, oh, shoot, yeah, I did not mean to act like that. And, like, this is what's going on. So I
Yeah.
think that is definitely something that, and I think as you get older, you learn that as well, right? Like looking back to even my teenage and early 20s, like, I've had people say, "Wouldn't you love to be 25 again?" I'm like, "No, no.
I'm good.
I am real good. I'm real good. I don't need to be back there." And just, to think like, okay, what would my younger self need my older self to say, to be like, you know what? It's okay that you felt like that. And
Yeah.
let's learn from it as we move into the future. And let's not act like that anymore. We
Yeah.
can change and shift and grow. There's that ability to
Yeah.
do that. So,
Yeah. And learning how to take feedback. I mean, that's something that I'm
yes,
still working on, right? Like how to take feedback from someone and not be defensive. And now how
right.
they deliver feedback is of course important. But like being able to take feedback from someone and putting on your listening ears, right? Like
Yep.
instead of going into defense mode and trying to justify your actions and try to over explain why you behaved a certain way, thinking about, okay, even though I really was stressed out, that stress is valid, this over here is valid. I really did take it out on this person when they didn't deserve it. How do I go about fixing that so that I'm not taking out my stress on other people undeservingly?
Right.
Right. And like that feedback can be really, really freaking hard to get.
Right. Yeah.
But
It
I
can be
think,
hard to give and it can be hard to
yeah,
take, right? Like
yeah,
for, just that like exchange of like, hey, this really weird thing happened and you got really mad at me and I don't really know why, right? Like I've had to deliver that information to people before,
yeah,
to say, well, I'm sorry you are grumpy today. I'm not sure what's happening with you. But I don't like being talked to like that. And how would you like to move forward? Because yeah, I am the first one that will build up that wall and be like, I don't need to talk to you ever
yeah,
again.
yeah,
But that's not right in business. That's not the point of business. The point of business is to have those connections where you're not like building walls and then, just like chucking grenades over the walls, hoping that like, oh, I hope that person burns down, right?
right,
That's not the point of
right,
business.
right. Yeah, it's like in business, you really do have to learn those interpersonal skills. Like you really do have to hone in on how you communicate with people, how you take out your stress, and how you do all these things. And I think especially in psychology, right? And on the
Mm-hmm.
internet, even, it seems so black and white. Like when someone does this, you say this, right? They disrespect you, so you say, "Hey, I feel disrespected by that." That's like the proper way to give someone feedback is the I statement, right? Blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But what we can never account for when we're talking in hypotheticals is human emotion, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can never really predict how people are going to act and body language and tone. And we can talk about all these things. But these conversations are never out of a textbook, linear. You say this, they come back with this. So you say this, and they say this, and blah, 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 blah. It can be pretty well shown by psychology and studies and all these things, but we can never predict human behavior.
Right.
I mean, we can, that's a general statement, but I mean, like in these instances, right?
Right. Yep.
When we're talking about conflict, we never really know how that other person is going to act or how they're going to interpret what you say or, what their body language is going to be. So, and in
Mm-hmm.
business is the same thing. So like really thinking about how do I interact with people? You go back to networking. How do you interact with people? It's not
Mm-hmm.
this black and white, you do this, you say this, and then they're just going to send you all these qualified leads. It's still being a human. It's still learning how to interact with people, how to build relationships with people, right? How to show support, how to check your energy at the door. Honestly, even just like what sounds genuine versus what sounds forced.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Like that could be a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day of like, do you sound like a robot or do you sound like an actual human that like is genuine in what you're saying? It's not necessarily if it's rehearsed or not. Because
Right.
I encourage people to rehearse their introduction.
Right. Yes.
Right. But you can rehearse it and not sound rehearsed, or you
Mm-hmm.
can never have rehearsed it ever and you just have it written down on a paper and you read it and you literally sound like A1 or What's that robot's name from Star Wars? I'm not a Star Wars geek.
I don't know.
Terrible
Me either.
reference.
Yeah.
I used a reference of something I can't even.
R2D2. It's
R2D2.
That's it.
That's what it is. Why did I try to use a reference of a movie I don't watch?
Oh, that's funny. Too funny. Yeah, totally, for sure. So I have one last question for you to wrap this up. Okay, so if you were a kitchen utensil or gadget, what would you be and why?
Good Lord. A kitchen gadget or utensil?
Yeah, just whatever pops into your mind.
I feel like I would be one of those like fruit slicer things. You know how they have like a bunch of different ones for different fruit? Like I would be that because it's a little extra and not like it's not for everyone. You know, like it's a little extra, but it's useful and it's practical and you're gonna love it once you have it. But you know, people are very polarized on those things. Do you have them or do you not? Because you could really just use a knife.
Right. Yep.
And I feel like that describes me pretty well. Like, you're going to love me or you're going to hate me. But once you're in my circle, like once you're in there, you could even go the route of networking strategy. You might not feel like you need it because you can just kind of over here DIY it with a knife. But once you have that pineapple core thing, you're like, wait a minute. Why have I not been using this from the jump?
Yes, absolutely. Well, Sarah, it has been such a pleasure to have you on. I will drop all your information in the show notes below, but go ahead and tell everyone how they can connect with you best.
Honestly, the easiest way for something like this to find me is just go to my website. Go to sarahjeanco.com. It has everything. It has my social media links. It has everything about my events, my consulting. The whole nine is just really easy on the website. If you want me to come speak at your event, if you want me to come speak for your team, whatever. But you can also find my social links for Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and TikTok and stuff is all on there. So just go to sarahjeanco.com. It's only one link that you have to remember, and it's JEAN, sarahjeanco.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure talking to you today.
Yes.
I can't wait for everyone to listen. This will be such a good episode.
Thank you so much.
Wow. What a great interview. Thank you so much for showing up here on the Chaos to Clarity podcast. Again, my name is Maggie. I'm so excited to connect with you. You can find all of the information, all of the links below in the show notes for today's interview. And I hope you have the best day ever.